Now recording.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. I am Shogun. Today we are doing a special event, which will be the first of a series of podcasts on the occult. Ultimately, I want to talk about all the different occult arts and sciences, which would be essentially alchemy, astrology, Kabbalah, numerology, also called gematria, and then magic, and I may be forgetting some things. But we're going to talk about all these subjects, and today we're going to start with magic in theory and practice. So we're going to just give a basic understanding of what magic is, magic with a K at the end. And yeah, we'll get into it. It'll be awesome. It'll be open discussion, so everyone is encouraged to participate freely. And that being said, we are the Roundtable Discord server. Please Google Roundtable Discord to find our link, or you can find us through Conspiracy or Politics on Discord. We are on all social media, so please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all the other social media you are on. And our website is the Roundtable Discord server. No, it's roundtablediscord.com. Okay, thanks very much, everyone, for joining. Again, we're going to talk about magic. I may as well give my own quick introduction, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So I like to use Aleister Crowley's definition of magic, which is magic is the art and science of causing change in accordance with the will. So in general terms, any intentional action carried through skillfully that achieves its desired result is a form of magic, and therefore magic has numerous expressions. I personally believe that magic is very real, but that most people misunderstand what it is, and in their minds they define it as something that by definition doesn't exist, and therefore they think it's absurd when you say that magic exists because they've already defined it in their mind as that which does not exist. So when you say magic exists, they're like, oh, haha, that's like saying a unicorn exists. Not really. Magic goes back to the earliest culture. There has never been a culture in human history that did not understand and practice magic. Many cultures have banned or prohibited magic precisely because it is real, and therefore it was considered important to regulate. But again, it goes back to Sumeria, Babylon, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Chaldea, you name it. And in every single culture, up to and including like the recent and current British monarchies, etc., you would always have court wizards, court astrologers, and court magicians because every culture knew and understood that magic is real. And so even the original 007 was Dr. John Dee, who was Queen Elizabeth's wizard, and he was an Enochian magician, and he did magic apparently that helped her, create her empire and so forth. And so, yeah, every pharaoh, all of them did magic. And you got to ask yourself, were all these elites of all time, all the rulers and smart people of all time, just completely on crack and making this all up? Or is there something we don't understand about this? And, of course, even the contemporary elites use magic all the time. So magic operates primarily through language and gesture. So when you see like a wizard in a movie or in a book doing like a spell, he does two things. He says syllables or mystic specific phrases, and he moves his hands or positions his body in certain ways. And ultimately, that is the main mechanisms through which magic works. Is language, both written and spoken, the posture of the body, the hands, the voice, the tone of the voice, the words and the selection of words, combined with qualities like charisma and properties like authority, and things like costume, ritual, right? So there are many forms of magic. One form is called chaos magic, and another form is called Western ceremonial magic. And there's other forms as well, such as Wicca or witchcraft, and, many more. Kabbalistic magic. But, yeah, so I think that's like a little introduction. And now I just want to pass it off. Is there anyone else who wants to give a definition of magic or an introduction or anything else?
Well, I'd like to I would like to talk about magic. Can I talk?
Yeah, of course, bro. Please do.
All right, this is Open Eye. Well, magic, I'm going to tell you the big definition of the big magic that's controlling the human race right now is religion. Religion is the biggest magic that ever existed, because if you get a whole world bowing down on their knees and bowing their head in submission and you make them believe that everything's okay, God's watching over you, and you're not fight. You know, like me, I'm a warrior. I'm fighting back. Now imagine if all the whole human race was fighting. Okay, that's the way it should be. But as long as they have y'all in submission, like millions and millions of people, that's the greatest magic of all. And that's why the aliens are doing that to us. So religion is the greatest magic of submission, okay? And they lie. It's like CNN news. I mean, once you catching them one lie, it's like, oh, well, that's just one lie. I'm going to keep on believing. Oh, you catch them in two lies. It says, okay, I'm just going to keep on believing. You catch them with three lies. It says, oh, well, maybe I should start thinking about what's going on, you know?
Yeah, well, that's
So
a good point. What you're saying is, you want to make a closing point there? No,
no,
okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you made a good point that priestcraft, right? The priestcraft is a form of magic, right? It basically is a form of institutionalized magic that is considered like have this stamp of sacred authority. But does anyone else want to mention? I mean, Crack Villain or perhaps Valorex? Either you guys want to give a definition?
I have lots to say on magic, but it's a little off tangent, as you know, my basis for it.
It's okay, Mike.
I believe all magic that we know of is from interaction with an extraterrestrial species via many mediums of technological interactions. So projected holograms appear as etheric. They appear as ghosts or the dead. Human beings have had this desire they've had a fear of death for so long that I think these beings decided to play with our dead relatives, as it were, with the ability for them to like body scan them and project them to us, and then tell them that our grandfather is talking to us and so forth. So these occult rituals of demonology to summon things. They also have light technology to project over your eyes, so they can give you dreams. So when you do a love spell, for example, they can then go give that person dreams of you, and literally be like a magical interaction that they would describe in the books in the past and the mystics and all that stuff. Astral projections, as the Jews and the magic and stuff they talk about. Even Islamists refer to as astral projection. I believe is interaction with what's now known as remote viewing, which is communication to these extraterrestrials through certain abilities that we have. So basically, anything that you can pinpoint as magic in the past could be correlated to this interaction with these beings' technology. They do have mind reading technology too. So these schizophrenics that think their minds are being read are actually getting it read, and they will play off that mind reading to make it seem like some kind of psychic phenomena, some kind of telepathic phenomena, or you are, reading their mind too, is because you're being fed information from someone. And it all has to do with when these aliens want somebody to play with. So they will make a sorcerer out of someone and give them all these powers, as it were, and make him their happy-go-lucky little wizard. Because back in the day, shit was going on when people would do stuff, and they would get respect and feared and all this other stuff, all these sorcerers and crazy people doing stuff and casting spells and druid paganism, all kinds of stuff. But I believe it can literally all be pinpointed down to interaction with extraterrestrial projection technologies and microwave auditory effects, synthetic telepathy, etc.
I think that's an interesting perspective. 100%. Always thought LSD's perspective on that's pretty interesting.
Well, and if you want to know where I even really gathered that from, that's what they told me. That's what ETs in my contact scenario told me. So they're the origin of all occult and all magic interaction, and then you have to link it to the technology and why.
I mean, that actually makes a good deal of sense in the sense that, it explains why magic works, right? So magic has been believed to work ever since ancient times.
They got into magic and they tried to...
I'm sorry, is my microphone not working? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Dragon Boy. I don't know if your mic's not working. Maybe leave the room and come back because I was clearly speaking, and therefore you were interrupting. So I was saying that NSA's theory actually is quite interesting because it would account for how and why magic works and has worked throughout history. And it would also explain because aliens, gray aliens, people like Soul Diver, etc., will argue are actually demons, and traditionally magic, certain kinds of magic at least, were definitely conceived of as working by interacting with and making contracts and communicating and pacts and deals with demons. So if the demons are simply aliens, then this would explain that the elites of all time through magic were contacting aliens, making deals with aliens, and then the aliens through their technology were allowing the magic to work. So actually it makes a certain amount of sense.
I know, kind of creepy.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about because in the end, there was old schools of magic like Goetia, right? So part of the Western ceremonial magic tradition was, all about summoning different kinds of demons with different sigils. And sigils actually do look quite technological. I'll post them when someone else is talking. They're like glyphs that look like almost like little circuits or something. And through these, you could contact all these different demons and then make deals and get different things from them. So who knows? Maybe that's just some weird kind of technology, so that is something you can't rule out. However, I have a totally different theory on magic. But does anyone else want to say anything?
Well, someone tried to use magic on me. I figured out who they were. It was a Hollywood cult he was involved in, and he tried to use magic on me, and he admitted it. He says, well, if I can't do what I could do to you, my friends can do it. Whatever. You know what I'm saying? The dude was trying to do magic on me. I mean, this is a Hollywood blood-sucking magic cult. In Hollywood, they're playing around with magic. I mean, they got a grand master out there in Hollywood, maybe a couple of them. And but they try to use their magic on you, and if they try to say something's in your hand, you got to tell them no, and it's going to go back with fire. In your mind. See, if someone's sending something to me, I'm going to send back fire back at you, and that's just my weapon, all right, of choice. So, but I had people really trying to attack me. I mean, in Georgia too. I mean, these people tried to use witchcraft on me, and I burnt up the paperwork, and these people burnt up human combustion. Now, if you want to call that magic, spontaneous human combustion, that's my choice of protection. So, now I don't know about some of the other magic, you might have, but I believe in the fire, man. I believe in fire, bro, really. But you gotta understand, when they try to use magic on you, if you master the art of fire, if they trying to send something at you, you could send it back to them. I mean, you gotta be very careful who you fucking with. If you point one finger at them, you might have 12 fingers pointing back at you. Okay? You understand that?
Sure.
So, my magic that I use is mostly fire because it's only protection. It's protecting, I don't go out and attack people unless I know you're the enemy, So, it's kind of like a boomerang.
How much of magic do you think is science and how much is art? Because I would tend towards the fully art side of things.
Well, one thing I would say to that is the hardest thing I can find out about magic is there's no reasoning behind it. Meaning, like, if you make something disappear, the thing that my mind, and I think a lot of humans have a problem with, is how to comprehend it. There's no explanation for it. Oh, it just disappeared. Well, how did it disappear? And I think it's one thing we can't really wrap our heads around, because most things that happen, there's an explanation for it.
Oh yeah, I did want to mention one thing about ritual magic real quick. Now you reminded me of it. So ritual in itself, it's many people, right? So we're an emotional species. We bind our interactions to emotions. When you have like 10 people around doing an altar, doing a ritual of some sort, you're doing a collective like ritual together, and you're binding emotions of that whatever you're doing, like sacrifice or whatever it is, to an emotion with all these people that are involved, and so it creates this psychological spark, as it were, an altar or some sort that you'll remember it later, basically very vividly, for example. And so it's a type of magic in the sense of psychic magic. But all ritual holds that. Like if you look at any of the Jewish magic and stuff like that, they have like there's rabbis that can like give magical powers to a picture, and then this, if you do something with that picture because the rabbi said so, the God will come do something or whatever, and that's their way of doing like single target ritual magic. The ritual magic in itself, like church, the Catholic Church, for example, has a lot of ritual magic. The incense they burn when they walk through, and all the, eating the bread and everything else. It all has this type of emotional tie to like, the words that are used. That's why they use Latin too. So it's kind of neat. Spiritus Sanctus Nomen Patris, eat my bread.
Okay, so how you guys doing? Valor here. Magic. What an interesting term that I feel the word has been quite abused in modern times, especially in pop culture. Final Fantasy, Twilight, Lord of the Rings, lots of interpretations. And I feel like that's done a grave disservice to the average human being, because I do feel like there's great worth and value in understanding what magic is. But before we can really dive into that, in my opinion, I do think it's worth describing a little bit of how we as human beings experience this reality. And funnily enough, I think that it is that we experience this reality in three unique ways: emotionally, intellectually, and our will. Our emotions can be parallel to our physical body, right? And our intelligence can be parallel to our mind, and our will can be parallel to our heart or our guts, right? The universe, or this reality, influences each three of these things in very unique ways, right? Psychologically, we can be led to do lots of things that go against our best interests unwittingly. We can be emotionally manipulated into doing things against our best interest. And our will can also be quite crushed and destroyed. And when all three of these things happen together, you have the antithesis of what a human being should be. But what happens if you're able to align all of these things for your own benefit, right? So if the universe or external forces can influence you through these three avenues, why can't we influence the universe in the same way? I'm sure we all can agree that the universe is causal and connected. We see this in various ways, and it's quite sublime. So if we take this approach and we try to align all three of these aspects of our experience of this reality, we might be able to do quite remarkable things. But this requires some sort of training, right? We need to understand how our emotions work, right? In order to get our emotions in step with our will, which needs to be in step with our intellect. So our emotions are quite varied. I feel Jung talks a lot about how to handle and get a grip on our emotions. Will is usually done through a form of initiatory rite. The mystery schools are really good at ramping up your will, your ability to really set your mind to something and not let anything stop you. And please stop me if I'm running on too long. And then you're training your mind, your intellect to study patterns and to divine knowledge in nature through your senses. So emotions, once we have that under control, once we have an idea of what we want to do, how we want to change the reality around us, and we have our will, like our guts and our heart, set forward to it, then we can start doing what they consider magic. Now, you're not going to get any sort of instant gratification, and you also can't sit there and worry about it. So let me give you an example. let's say that I want to get this job, right? Let's say I want to get this job. And I think they call this law of attraction in some way, but this is just how I view it. Let's say you want to get a job, you have an interview coming up, okay? So you need to do all three things, all three parts of your consciousness, so to speak, need to be in line, right? Emotionally, you need to be secure. You need to understand that the job isn't life, right? It's just a tool for you to access happiness, a tool for you to, secure the well-being of your progeny, lots of things, all the things you want to do, okay? You've done the due diligence intellectually, right? You've studied the company that you're applying for, you've went to school, you've studied your trade, and now you have your will. You are going to declare to the world within your soul that I'm going to get, to get this job, or I'm going to do well in the interview. You're going to believe it with all of your heart. You're going to union all three of the parts of your consciousness. You're going to go in there and do what you got to do. That might do something for you in a way that, and honestly, this sounds like just self-help, but the secret's as old as time. Sadly, I'm not more organized in this, but yeah, Magick.
Thank you very much, Valor, and everybody. I think everybody's said really valid and good things about Magick. I just want to elaborate a little more on how I see it as well. So I'll give you an example, right? Is it possible to cast the spell of paralyze or halt, Well, consider something, right? Imagine there's a person that you don't know. You're walking down a street, and all of a sudden you see a person, kind of crazy looking, maybe starts running towards you, and you see that they have violent intent. They're coming straight at you, maybe high on drugs or something. Now, a normal person might flinch or show some kind of fear, whatever. The person might jump on them and attack them, whatever. Now, in theory, right, imagine you ground yourself, right? You plant your feet wide, shoulder width apart. You bring your shoulders back. You raise your chin up, right? So you're looking down a little bit at the guy, down your nose. You keep your head up, you furrow your brows. You hold your arm out very straight, not shaking, and you hold your hand back at like a 90-degree angle so your palm is facing forcefully towards the person. You inhale all the air in your lungs, and you shout very loudly and in a very forceful way, "Stop!" And you literally do that. If you execute all those maneuvers, those subtle movements of your body, and then that specific tone of voice and that specific volume, the guy will literally stop in his tracks, right? He might actually fall over if you do it properly. He might stumble. Now, it's not 100% guaranteed to work on everybody, right? If the guy's whacked on meth, maybe it wouldn't work, but it will work in a great number of cases. So what has actually happened there? You've literally exerted a transphysical force that literally passed from you to him, and it was just your body language, your hand gestures, and the words you made with your mouth. So this is actual magic. And there's endless examples of this, right? I mean, if you have the correct combination of symbols, language, charisma, authority, etc., these techniques of magic, you can do anything from destroy the whole world, launch nuclear strikes, to get someone to give you their whole bank account as a donation, or in the nature of like being a con man. You can hypnotize people, you can mesmerize people, you can do surgery on someone when they're hypnotized without anesthetics. You can give orders that will be carried out without question. You can seduce a woman, right, or a man into wanting to fall in love with you or have sex with you. All of this is magic, and it's literally just that we don't understand it, right? So the point is everyone is doing magic, but the question is, do you do it consciously or unconsciously? Do you do it skillfully or not skillfully? And do you have a unifying field theory of it, or do you just do it haphazardly? And essentially, what I eventually figured out in my master's degree was there's this guy named Pierre Bourdieu, who is a sociologist, and he created my favorite theory of sociology, which has three concepts: field, habitus, and capital. And I ended up writing a paper basically interpreting this in context of magic and occultism. And, I'm not whatever, but my advisors, whatever, were quite surprised. They said that they never thought of it that way, and it made a lot of sense to them. And essentially, field is simply the arena in which the magician or a social engineer is operating, right? So the field could be anything from a bar that you're in, or a coffee shop, or a classroom or seminar, or it could be your workplace, or it could be this Discord server, or it could be a game of Monopoly you're playing. The field is the board, right? If you use a metaphor, the field is the chessboard or the Monopoly board, the game board that you're playing on, the risk board. That's the field, the arena in which you're operating. Habitus is your personal orientation, your personal nature, your personality, your personal qualities. So if you're playing Risk and you're Russia, well, that's your habitus. If you're playing Monopoly in your little car, I guess that's your habitus. If you're playing chess and you're the white side, that's your habitus, so to speak. So your habitus is your personality, your inclination, and your personal. It's basically your goals, actually. It's not really the pieces. It's your goals. It's your victory conditions. Your habitus is what you're trying to achieve based on your own personal motivations. So you may all be all playing on the same board, but you may all be playing different games, and you may be playing by different rules and for different goals, and that's your different habitus. Now, capital is the different resources, et cetera, that you can bring to bear that are operative in that field. So it could be anything from currency, cash and Monopoly, to social credit or influence, connections, relationships, material possessions, weapons, armor, anything you might possess, cars, everything is capital. Anything that can be used or exchanged, right? Now, essentially, with these three components, you can achieve any end, right, through the skillful manipulation of these three concepts in interaction with one another. And again, the medium through which you do this is language. So if you look at magic symbols, what are symbols? Magic glyphs. Well, what is the language? It's just different glyphs, and they encode in an almost mystic way meaning. And when people read them, that meaning goes from your mind through that mystic code that you encoded your thoughts into their mind, into their brain. And they actually can't even choose to receive the message, right? So if you write something and you put it somewhere where someone will read it, they don't actually get to choose if they want to read it or not. As soon as they see it, they will get the thought. Like, they don't get to filter it out. It'll go right into their mind. And then that's where you get into things like meme magic, advertising, propaganda, brainwashing, social engineering. What you realize is social engineering is magic, and magic is social engineering. So one of the things NSA said that's very apt is that magic is ancient magic is ancient psychology clothed in occultism, basically, and that's what it is. Magic is the use of symbols and authorities and signs to manipulate the minds of other people and their feelings and everything else, and their social bonds. And because you can do that, you can then literally do anything, right? There's many, many aspects to this. This isn't all of it, but I think if people just understood, right, like, what is a judge, right? He's got a black robe on. He's sitting at a big altar in a special kind of throne, and he just speaks. And once in a while, he like whacks a little hammer. But somehow he's able to pass judgments on people and condemn people and forgive people and, command people, and everything he says is done. Well, how? He's just a dude. I mean, it's magic. It's all different kinds of magic.
I'll interject here a bit on my opinion on magic. I'll play a bit of devil's advocate. It's not my personal beliefs, but through my research and what I've heard from different people, it all depends on what you define as magic. Because I've met some people who define magic simply as quote-unquote human abilities, and that can range from anywhere to some people saying the human sixth sense of when you think someone's looking at you and then you glance across the room and someone's staring at you, to anywhere from astral projection. It all depends on how you define it. But I've met people who claim human abilities, like wackier ones like biokinesis and levitation, are a hidden form of magic that, instead of needing to use sigils and or words to activate, some humans, if you have it innately naturally, if you train, can activate these quote-unquote magical abilities on their own.
I have a few things to say about magic. So first of all, what is magic really? What makes the qualitative difference between magic and non-magic? What sets it apart? Is it if it's doing something that's incredible? No, of course not, because with science, we can do more and more incredible things, and we don't call that magic. Back in the day, people would call it magic, but they're not going to call it magic right now because we understand it. So, what is magic? Is it simply things we don't understand that is too amazing?
Okay.
Or, I'm still speaking, or can someone not hear me? Is there something wrong with my voice?
No, we can hear you.
Okay. So, yeah, what separates magic and non-magic? So, as far as I know, there isn't anything that we can use to pinpoint a separation point between magic and non-magic. some would argue that, everything is magic, but then the word magic becomes kind of, pointless. So I would really like to know what separates magic and non-magic.
Can I answer that? At least to give the answer. So you're right, because according to my definition, which is actually Aleister Crowley's definition, magic is the art and science of causing change in conformity with the will. And so therefore any intentional human action, whether chemistry or science or engineering or martial arts or dancing, is all magic. And that's actually how I like to look at it. I think that's actually an empowering understanding that everything is different styles of magic. Every conscious, skillful form of technique is magic. But aside from that, the way to distinguish it is by looking at what is called the occult arts or occult sciences, and that's the purpose of this series. So essentially, the only way you can distinguish magic from everything else is by looking at it as an established canon or an established spectrum of arts from the Western tradition. There's Eastern traditions too, but we're not going to talk about that in this series. It'll be a whole different series. But in the Western tradition, the traditional occult arts, right? So there's some terms we should define. Occult means hidden, right? The hidden knowledge is the occult knowledge. Esoteric means inner, the inner knowledge, as opposed to the outer knowledge. That's for public consumption, it's the inner knowledge of the initiates. And then you have the term arcane, which essentially also means concealed, and hermetic, which means sealed. So hermetic, occult, esoteric, arcane, they all mean the same thing. It's the secret hidden knowledge that only the initiates knew of all times. And essentially there are, I think, 7 hermetic arts. In any case, they are astrology, alchemy, gematria, Kabbalah, and then you could say tarot and magic. And then perhaps I'm forgetting one because that's 6. But anyways, these are the traditional occult arts, and they each have their own, logic and teachings and symbols and signs and processes. So that's really the only way you can distinguish it, because, for example, you look at a famous rocket scientist like Jack Parsons, right? He was a famous rocket scientist. I think he ended up working for NASA or whatever. But he also did magic. So he was both a rocket scientist and an occultist. And so he actually did spells and magic. So, we know magic because it's spells, it's invocations, it's rituals, it's divination, it's conjuring, it's binding, it's fucking evocations, and it has its own recognizable symbols and trappings, I guess, is the only way to answer that.
Hey, isn't that dude that they killed? Didn't they kill him? They murdered him, huh? That rocket scientist dude you talking about?
I'm not sure. We'll come back to that.
I heard a story about him, and he was a rocket scientist, and he was doing occult stuff, and then someone did something and blew his head off or something, and it said, oh, it was an accident. He was doing rocket technology or something, and they actually killed him, I think. Because he was involved in that fucking cult shit.
Okay.
Or maybe
we'll come back to that, Open. But Weaver's trying to say something too. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say that. What separates invocations from scientific processes? Are they not also scientific? I mean, maybe it's something we don't understand yet, but I don't think it's outside of science. So I don't think it's supernatural in any way, shape, or form. So what separates an invocation from building a circuit? I mean, I look at the occult and I see a lot of math. I see a lot of sacred geometry. I see a lot of stuff that seem to be pointing towards the nature of reality and the understanding of the structure of it. That's it. But I don't see how that's magic. That's just the structure of the universe.
Well, and again, that's what I tried to establish at the beginning, is inevitably what people have done without realizing it is they have defined magic in their own mind as that which does not exist, or that which counteracts reality, or that which goes against logic. And so then, of course, by definition, you're saying, well, either magic doesn't exist or these things aren't magic because magic is that which is impossible or ridiculous or whatever. And so I'm just saying it's not the case, right? So magic is not necessarily supposed to mean that it transcends laws of nature. In fact, the whole concept of magic is having a subtle an advanced understanding of the laws of nature and actually using them to achieve results. And in the sense that you can do, trial and error and experimentation and hypothesis testing and that with magic. I'll quote Aleister Crowley. He said, "We place no reliance on virgin or pigeon, the method of science, the aim of religion." So the reason that a magic is different, it's the method of science, the aim of religion. So it's simultaneously spiritual and practical. It does employ what you might call paranormal or supernatural energies at times, insofar as it can posit the existence of like angels or demons and interacting with them and so forth. And yeah, it's not strictly scientific because it has a mystical nature as well, but it's not strictly mystical because it has a scientific nature as well.
I really wonder what will is. I mean, we know will is a feeling, and logically looking at the world, if it is deterministic, now I am actually moving towards the acausal universe understanding, but let's just stick to the deterministic world. Wow, I actually just forgot what I was going to say. I'm so sorry.
No,
well, I'm going to tell you something about magic. If you don't see the invisible dimension like I'm trying to teach y'all with the Open Eye Project, I have seen a lot of magic. I have seen people do magic. And but that's the invisible dimension. But you have to be a seer to know, to know a lot of, like, I'm a master. I'm like the highest number you could get on the scale pretty much because I could see. Now, people that are blind, you're like -0. So you're down there like, until you could see, magic doesn't exist really. Because you could, if you do a magic trick or try to do magic on someone that's evil, it can come back at you and you could die. Really. I mean, I never attack nobody. That's the #1 rule. In magic or in God's creation or whatever, you never attack nobody, because if you attack somebody and you kill that person, it might be you. You might kill yourself. You understand what I'm saying? So that's one rule that you never do. You never attack nobody. I never, and another thing is, when someone does attack you, they're trying to tell you, oh, something's in your hand, like that dude tried to do that bullshit with me. Oh, you got a red book in your hand. I said, no, I don't. He said, you got a red book in your hand. Trying to, that's mind control shit. And I know what so a lot of people don't realize if they're trying to make you imagine something that's there, that isn't there, that's religion too. You know what I'm saying?
I remember this.
Go ahead.
So yeah, the thing I was saying was about like free will. Essentially, if we believe in the deterministic universe, there's no free will, and the feeling of will itself is just a feeling. So if we're to tie that, because I know will is a big part of magic, it's just a big part of it. Willpower and will is like one of the core parts of almost all schools of magic. So is it just a feeling? And if it is just a feeling, what does that mean? Or is will or feelings something more than we understand? Maybe feelings are something deeper, because it's an experience. It's just like red, it's just like blue. We don't really understand it. We know it correlates to certain things in life, in the physical realm, but we don't understand what feelings are, what emotions are. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of wonders, and I don't know. I'm curious, how does will connect to magic?
Yeah, that's a good point. So again, words have different connotations in different contexts, and free will, I agree, doesn't make sense for free will to exist. I'm just gonna, so I don't believe in free will per se either, and we've done that whole long podcast with Yummy God about that, and we got really deep into why I find free will to be not logically coherent. But again, in this case, we're actually not talking about free will. It's actually a different concept. It's thelema, or will, in the sense of basically focused intention and concentration and belief is basically how I would describe it. And one way, a form of doing magic is called dream magic. And dream magic is a whole discipline you can master if you learn how to lucid dream. Because when you become lucid in a dream, then technically, because it is indeed your dream, there's no limit to what you can do, right? You can fly, you can throw fireballs, you can summon things, you can teleport, you can destroy things or whatever, create things. But it's very complicated and difficult, and it's a really subtle art to actually do those things. And one of the primary ways that you do them is through will. So it's basically visualization, intention, and will, to which you could add like concentration. So if you're trying to fly for the first time in a lucid dream, essentially you need to, look up at the sky and just will yourself to fly. And it's hard to explain, but if you do it, you'll know what I mean. It's like a mental muscle. You have to will yourself to walk through a wall, or will yourself to fly through a glass pane, or to fly in a lucid dream. So that literally is will. And it's the same in a dream, in a magic when you're awake. So when you're doing like the lesser banishing ritual of a pentagram or charging a sigil in chaos magic, you're using that same mental energy of will. It could be called faith, right? But it's not just faith, because it's also intention and visualization. So you have to mentally see a picture of what you're trying to accomplish, and then combine that with a mental will. And there's really no other way to describe it than a spiritual or mental push of intention and focus. So I think that's the meaning of will. So it's not potentially speaking about free will, it's talking about willpower.
The thing, though, about intention is that it's just the feeling. And if we're to assume feelings are just, chemicals in your brain, neuron synapses firing, then I don't see anything behind it. But if feelings are something else, and if we go towards an acausal universe, and then we figure out maybe, just maybe, that, this world is not deterministic and is actually acausal, and with that in mind, I think it's possible to actually make sense of feelings and intentions as something more than just something you feel, but something that's actually directing the flow of what's happening in the future. So, I mean, do you see what I'm saying? Like, if it's a feeling in someone's mind in a deterministic universe, I don't see much behind it. Besides, I mean, you can look at it from a mathematical way. You have a will in your mind, and that manifests itself through your actions in life. So let's say you always wanted to be a sharpshooter, and then you become a sharpshooter. That's, I guess you could say that's manifestation of your will, and it's realistic. But I don't know. I'm a little confused.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an immediate subject. It's actually Thank you. Just one second.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest hurdles for me when I was coming.
Am I back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. If I could reply. Sorry, I have someone else was speaking, but it's not an immediately understandable thing, right? It's actually one of the more subtle and complicated and difficult to grasp concepts. So, that's why it's always only a small subset of people who ever, studied it or whatever, and it can definitely take a while to get your head around. So I'm thinking now, maybe what would make sense is to describe how some magic is actually done, right? Because we've been talking about it in like general terms, theoretical terms. So that will also help me to answer Weaver's question. So look at chaos magic, right? There's a guy named Austin Osman Spare, and he created basically the system of chaos magic, which is different from Crowley's ceremonial magic. So in a simplified form of chaos magic, you would simply take a pen and paper, or whatever, quill and paper, and you would write your intention in the form of a sentence or whatever, and that would be essentially the spell that you're trying to cast. So this could be intentions for yourself, your life, things you would become, or things you would achieve or accomplish, essentially, in your life, or acquire, whatever. It could be anything. And then you simply remove every repeating letter from the sentence until there's only the letters that remain. and then you realign those letters to create a sigil. And I can show examples of this, but you essentially turn it into like a talisman, like a little piece of art that is made of these letters in a way that they no longer look like letters because they're all connected to make a glyph. But really, it's all made of the letters that made up the sentence, right? Then you simply have your talisman, which is a visual representation of your magical will and the form of your intent, right? So encoded your encoded intent. So now you just need to charge this. Okay, 1 sec.
Don't load it up, just wait 2 seconds. Try and speak again.
Connection, is it better?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so then once you've created your glyph, your chaos magic sigil, you charge it. And there's different ways to charge it. There's blood magic, which I don't recommend, but you would actually cut yourself, or, that's the only way, is your own blood, and then put it on there, which is actually a huge thing called blood over intent. It's like a weird online cult that has grown up around doing this in a different sense, but you can charge it with blood. I don't recommend this. You could also charge it and you have to charge it also by visually and mentally focusing your spiritual energy into it, but that's a little subtle. But also people use sex magic, so they actually masturbate and ejaculate on the sigil. I know it's all very strange, but this is how it's done. And basically the idea is whatever kind of energy you put into it, right, it charges it in some way, right? And then you can, I think, destroy it, or you could put it in like a box and keep it, whatever, burn it. But why would any of this make sense, right? You can think this is nonsense, right? There has no way this could accomplish anything. But the thing is, what you got to remember is, like what Weaver was saying before, is feelings are just chemicals in your brain and so forth, and that's actually not true. That is one level of what feelings, etc., are, just like one level of what experience is. But it's not the whole thing, and there are multiple levels of emergent phenomenon that come out of that, including ones that impact on the outside world. So, for example, I know it's kind of meandering now, but if you have a flash of adrenaline or an emotion, right, fear or anger or rage, you could actually flood your body with adrenaline and other hormones that would make you supernaturally strong, to the point that you could actually, there's been cases of like a 12-year-old girl lifting a truck off her father. And it's just like unbelievable how much strength she gained through that quote-unquote feeling. So these are powerful feelings, right? The fact that you can describe them in terms of chemicals in the brain doesn't reduce the power they have. And everything you do in this world, it's you doing it, right? So anything that influences your process is therefore real and powerful. So one way to look at magic would be applied psychology, right? Applied self-psychology. So psyche means both mind and soul. But example, so when I was young and I used to practice magic, and I don't anymore, I did a series of sigil workings where I charged different sigils, and each one represented an intention I had for myself, right? I will become a warrior, or I will become a monk, I will become a wizard, I will become a genius. Like, I can't remember what they were, but they had to do with becoming very intelligent, very strong, and a martial artist, all my different goals for myself, and you charge them all. Now, the concept would be that these intentions that you form and charge psychologically are like seeds that you're planting in your mind, which will grow over time to fruition subconsciously, right? So I'm not saying this is true, I'm just telling you the theory about it. Now, I would say many of those things did actualize in my life, right? I can't remember what they all were. I won't say I am what I wanted to be 100%, but the point is, right, it could be seen as a form of hacking yourself, right? And because it's like harnessing the power of even the placebo effect, right? The placebo effect has been shown to be at least half as strong as any medication. So including psychedelics, you can have a psychedelic trip from placebo, it's been shown. You can dull pain almost half as effectively as morphine. So, in other words, belief is very powerful. Even if the effect is only psychological, it still could be very powerful. And also, of course, the psychology doesn't just affect you, it affects groups of people, which is why you look at Hitler giving his speeches and throwing his arm up and saying certain words, and everyone goes crazy, and he can literally mobilize a whole nation that way. So I know I'm kind of meandering, but
I was wondering, if it could go even deeper than that, more than just, chain of effects in the world that causes a change. Yes, it affects large people, and it can affect a nation, it can affect the world. I get that. But I was thinking, maybe there's more to it, like synchronicity, for example. What if there's infinite parallel realities, and somehow, because we don't understand what consciousness really is, what emotions really are, and what time is, why we experience time. How can we have experience in a moment? All of these are questions. So, I mean, is there a possibility that, you know, the universe is a causal? So like there's a function or a line, you know, point A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever. But it doesn't mean that B created point C or C created point D. It's just they're connected, and one comes before, one comes after. But it doesn't mean that one led to the other. Causation, I think, is a very a misunderstood idea. I think correlation is just a much more better understanding because there's correlation between things, but causation implies that if one thing didn't exist, the other thing wouldn't be, essentially, and that's not the case. I would compare it to a book. You know, if you rip one page out, it's not gonna make the other pages go away. Kind of like that. So there's no dependency. At least that's the way I see it. But there's a relationship. So the whole thing, as above, so below. I think that, you know, everything has kind of a reflection of the universe in it. Every single point, every single thing, kind of reflects the truth of this universe and of everything, actually. So I forgot exactly what I was gonna say, but the point is, you can learn about anything from everything because it's just that's the way I see it.
But when I want to get to a point, y'all. The free will thing is part of the magic thing, okay? You gotta understand, when people are trying to tell you you have free will, it's like telling, like the dude, he says, oh, you got a red book in your hand, you got a red book in your hand, you got a red book, you got a red book, you got a red book. Oh, you got free will. It's the same thing. So they make you believe you got free will in religion, but you don't have free will. You actually have people dragging your kids to church, and you think it's free will.
Hold on. We're not talking. I know you always. Hold on, Open Eye. I know you always want to talk.
Flat Earth.
Open Eye. I know you always want to talk about religion, but we're not talking about religion.
No,
right
well, I'm talking about free will.
No, we're not talking about free will right now either, though. We're talking about magic. So I'm going to reply to Weaver. So he was talking about something important, actually, and he was talking about acausality. And I just wanted to mention that the Order of Nine Angles is a satanic, global satanic terrorist group, believe it or not. If you haven't heard of them before, it's a real thing. And they are like satanic wizards and terrorists, but they believe in magic, and they believe that the way it works is that there is an acausal dimension, and through magic you can interface with it and essentially create, you know, acausal effects or whatever. So I just thought that was interesting. And you're right? So like magic could just be, you know, built into the fabric of the universe through an not understood scientific principle like quantum uncertainty or spooky action at a distance or some other unknown phenomenon of science, right? That's also possible, or just the nature of causality and logic may not be what we think. And that is true because, for example, again, quantum paradoxes exist. Things can be, you know, particle and a wave, and there's quantum paradoxes. And then also there's something called retrocausality, which actually means that causation can flow backwards in time. And it's actually been proven. And when you realize that, like, we have no idea how the hell that works or how that would change the overall picture. So, you know, we know that things can actually communicate with each other faster than the speed of light through some kind of weird entanglement, right? Like two different particles, you spin one of them, the other one spins instantly at the same time, even if they're separated by space, and there's no time delay. So what is that, right? Is that pertaining to some of these magical connections? And I just want to say a few things about the practicality of this. There are certain forms of magic, or what I would call magic, that you can definitely do for yourself and prove to yourself, and those would include like lucid dreaming, out-of-body experiences, astral projection. And then I personally have experienced like all kinds of paranormal psychic phenomenon, like being able to predict things before they happened, you know, predicting things out loud to people or seeing other people do that, being able to do certain magical type effects and having like spider senses and sensing danger before it happens and different weird things like that that just prove to me that there is some weird mental power that goes beyond material logic.
Can I speak a little bit on this, Shogun? A second?
Please do. Yeah, please.
I have a couple of things that I could speak on in a minute after I'll talk a little bit about something I'm going to say now, which is I wanted to go back to a point Shogun made quite well, which he was talking about biohacking, and he used an example of a girl where she picked up a car that her father was underneath. So this is why when he started the podcast, we defined what magic was in terms of we were trying to open up the different avenues that magic can be seen in, so that we sort of understand it on a grander scope of like what people that are actually practicing. So what magic is what people who believe they are practicing something that is magic, that has an exterior force that is greater than what is usually considered to be in the normal realm. So, and this does come into contact with things such as sciences. So I'll go back to my point. So this young girl. So when we look at an example such as this, which would be a young girl moving her father from underneath a truck that her body is physically incapable of doing because of a flush or a flooding of, let's say, adrenaline, right, which is causing her to essentially what adrenaline will allow you to do in that situation, which is like, you know, fight or flight type thing, is that there's more potentiation of damage towards someone's body at this point. So your body weighs the risks. It goes, okay, so the damage at this point is if my father dies, this is on a psychological standpoint, my father dies, then I will not be able to be fed, so therefore it's worth risking me ripping my muscles to pieces and using the extra potential that is unlocked inside of our body, because our body doesn't always use our full potential. And this is where biohacking comes in. So where this comes into magic is that most normal individuals on a humanistic basis, and I feel I've tapped into this in the past, I'm going to disclaimer here, I don't believe in using magic. I don't think that it's necessarily ethical. I believe in its effects. I believe that it's something that exists, okay? But there are reasons why I would say I would not involve myself in it. But again, with biohacking, when we think of that girl doing that, now think about a man that has been able to do that maybe, and this is where I say I've experienced this myself. The biohacking part is this. So that girl has done something that is beyond her actual physical means of possibility, right? So now, would it be considered magic? So all of us have got this certain percentile that we're able to enact out in strength. Now with biohacking is this. You essentially learn in some way, either through form of ritual, either through form, and sometimes this comes in forms of self-harm. Sometimes this comes through forms of discipline, training. This is what happens in martial arts, which is essentially someone is able to hack their system to hack the different things in our brain, in our endorphin system, all these things. So a man would be able to essentially go, right, usually I've only got 20% strength of what my body and my brain, but it's biohacking is where you essentially go around that and you train yourself to be able to time and time again essentially assert much more power out of your body than what would usually be able of any normal human being. And people have done this time and time again. And when we say this is a form of magic, is because that is what magic is. It's going outside of the realm of what normal possibility is. And I have experienced this myself where, you know, through maybe some of the circumstances that I've been through, you know, that I have exerted forces or power way beyond the means of what my body should potentially be able to do. And that in and of itself is a form of magic, you know, essentially hacking your own mental system so that you're able to, on a trigger pull, release chemicals such as adrenaline. You can do these through disciplines. These disciplines would be classed as ritualistic. This would be the part of magic of where, you know, some magic is drawing a circle and you start attaching certain ideological points. You know, Shogun spoke about, you know, creating almost like sigils and graphs that have intent behind them. And by slowly refining down different points that you are wanting to achieve, what we're doing is we're almost signaling to our brain in some way. If this is a way of explaining it so that people can understand it in not just on a magical basis, but signaling to our brain that we're essentially trying to adapt and come to a certain perspective. And the way I believe that I did that with my own body hacking and strength is that I was involved in situations where I could be damaged or I could have been harmed in various ways on lots of different occasions. So I believe I was able to biohack myself in order to access a higher strength and capability, because I had in some ways also tricked my brain that I was in more danger than the average person. And in doing so, I had enabled my body to use systems that we use in, situations where we're in near-death experiences and things like this. But this would then become so used or so used to using that you could then enact it at different points. And then as well, your body will relinquish control on that even more in the biohacking as you condition your body physically, because now there's less risk to self-harming your body through enacting out more force. So there's lots of different things that come outside of the realm of like the norm of what a normal human can do. It's just your understanding on those principles and how you adjust and how you do it and the intent that you put into doing it, and then the methodology that you do it. This would be a form of magic. And to hint on like chemistry, pharmakia is an old word that's found in the Bible that literally is classed as well, we know that term ourselves in pharmaceuticals, and that was a term that was used for magic. That was essentially extending the powers of something that is natural past the point through a human interaction with it. So are using our own will, our will to will something further forward than what it already is. And that could come down to isolating factors out. So the starts of this would be alchemy, or even things like essential oils and extraction. So what we're doing is extending the power of something at its natural rate or state to a much further potential or point, so that either, let's say with essential oils, they have higher bioavailabilities, or then when we take this down further and we take out individual compounds out of plants, and then by doing so, we then change the way that our bodies metabolize them. So this is changing something from its natural state to a much further forward perspective. The ritual part, you could say, would be the methodology of segregating out said thing out of, and then once you've done that, that is part of the ritual of doing it, right? You have this process that you essentially assert with the will with an end goal. The end goal, you end up with something that in its end state is essentially far more powerful, and power could be accumulated or measured in different ways, with extractions or with chemistry. We started out with these two things, they did nothing on their own, but with human will and direction and intent, now together they can stop seizures, or they can potentiate someone's ability to do this, or it can create someone to hallucinate, or and this in and of itself, this is a form of magic. And how we distinguish what magic is, again, that's why it was important what Shogun really said at the beginning, I believe, guys, is magic is what you believe to be the impossible. That is not true, because the people that really define the term of what magic actually means are the people historically all the way back to Sumeria and onwards, and even in Western magics, it's the people that have done certain things in certain ways for a very long period of time, and they're the ones that were asserting that me putting my will and my intent in this direction, and a causation at the end of that from that, and that was what they said magic was. So for us to try and put new meaning on magic now limits us from looking into what magic really is in its entirety. But yeah, I've sort of got something else to say in a little bit, but I want other people to sort of speak. But yeah.
I had a question I wanted to bring up. And well, it's more of a discussion questioning, I guess. But basically, I wanted to know, especially if Shogun or we have anything to contribute to this, if like the if magic, given the intent to be given to change something in the environment or towards someone else's environment, do you believe that that can be easily accessible by means of like just anyone or people who are gifted with these sorts of traits?
I'm sorry, can you just rephrase the question? I apologize.
So I was saying, if you believe, or if Weaver knows this, or if anyone really can speak about this, if you believe like that anyone, just like absolutely anyone, rather than the people that are gifted with these traits of like knowing and all this knowledge and foundation towards magic, can have an effect towards or someone's environment or their own environment.
Are you asking that you need talent, or like you need to be born gifted, or can anybody do it? Well,
that's what I'm asking.
I don't know. I don't even know what really the application of magic truly is.
Let's go address it then.
But I mean,
Sorry.
I don't know.
Okay, so I mean, I think obviously, like anything else, people have, for whatever reason, more or less of a propensity for certain things. Like certain people have like a lot more intuition, or like more of a sixth sense, or some people are able to lucid dream really easily, or have out of body experiences really common. So there's no question that it varies, but I definitely think that anybody with sufficient hard work and discipline can develop some of these skills and abilities and experience some of it for themselves. And you can definitely, I mean, there's so many aspects to it, but you can definitely practice these disciplines. You know, anything from meditation to yoga is recommended, as well as chanting and all that kind of thing. And there's a difference between the spiritual experiences you can have and the sort of supernatural events that might occur. But, you know, the answer is like anything else. It's going to be a combination of gifts and talents and hard work and focus, right? So just like anything, you're going to have to work to develop things, but you may or may not also be gifted in some way.
We can talk about, like, you know, in real life experience.
You want me to talk about my real life experience?
We can all talk about it. Yeah, you can start. Then I would like to go after you, actually.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'll say maybe just one or two stories, and then I have others. But just to establish this concept, right? So, you know, one example, right? It sounds silly, but I was in a dock house beside the lake at my cabin with my friends. 4 of us were sitting there playing cards. We have the Iraq's Most Wanted deck, so 52 cards, obviously, and one of them is this big fat guy, and he's a really funny-looking big fat guy with a mustache. So we made the rule of the game is if you flip that card, you have to pound your entire drink. And all the cards are face down, you just flip cards randomly, right? And we're just playing and drinking and smoking weed, and I'm not thinking anything out of the ordinary. I'm just enjoying the experience. I'm not thinking about anything. And then I was really quite drunk, and I had a big full drink. And my friend's reaching for a card, and again, most of the cards are face down, almost all of them. And he's reaching for one card, and I just reacted. I was like, "No, not that card!" And I like winced and like turned my head aside, and raised my hand. And everyone looked at me like, "What the fuck? Like, why did you act that way? It didn't make any sense." And then I was like, "All right, fine, flip the card." And I knew, right? And he flipped the card, and it was the fat guy. Now, again, you don't have to believe me, but I'm just telling you this did happen exactly like this. And the things about it is everybody saw me react. So it's like predicted publicly. It wasn't just my own opinion. And then it was indeed that card. So, and it wasn't just a guess, right? It was like an instinctive reaction that I wasn't even conscious. Now, another story I'll tell along those same lines. I was walking in a back lane with my best friend, and we were going around a corner in a very peaceful, calm, quiet back lane. And on the gravel road, I hear a car just slowly driving behind us. And instantly, without any conscious thought, like reflexively, I run and I hide and I crouch behind the fence. And I had no idea why I was doing it. And I felt like embarrassed and like sheepish when I was doing it because I didn't know why I was doing it. and I ran and hid behind the fence. And then the car came around the corner and accelerated really fast. And the guy on the passenger side opened his door and intentionally hit my friend with it. And it really badly hurt him. He got like a black and purple bruise all the way from his ankle to his shoulder, and could have been killed or badly worse hurt. So the point is, in both of those cases, I somehow perceived some kind of danger or something, and there's just no conscious, logical way it could happen. So that proves to me that there is some kind of supernatural force. Anyway, sorry for taking the time on the mic, but
I would like to share one. Actually, I have two experiences that were not actually more than two, but I wanted to stick to one specifically because this was like voodoo, I guess. So this was like in third grade. I was really young, and my teacher was an asshole. I don't remember what happened exactly, but she was like picking on me or something. You know what I mean? Like unjustly fucking messing with me. So I had a voodoo doll. Actually, it was on my it was my sister's. Really nice one. And I just picked up a needle and I pointed it towards the heart, and I visualized and felt all of my anger, and I pushed it in. And then next time, when I came to class, this is what happened. Now, I'm not saying I caused it. I hope I didn't. I don't think I did. It doesn't make any scientific sense or logical sense. But what happened was crazy. So in the middle of class, her back, her disc of one of her, what do they call it, spine, slipped. And she had to be wheeled out on a wheelchair. That's how bad she got fucked in class. And I don't think she came back for a couple months or something. It was really, really, really bad what happened to her. So she was gone the next time I saw her in a really miserable way.
that's hardcore, man. Straight up voodoo. And I mean, I totally believe in that, right? And that's a basic form of magic. And there's certain principles of magic, right? I posted in the special event chat. Thanks for sharing that. The Kybalion, which is a book written by the quote-unquote 3 initiates. I'm going to post also the Emerald Tablets. But the Kybalion explains the Hermetic Principles. And, there's the principle of, like, correspondence, basically. And it's just this mystic concept, basically, that you can somehow, if you have, like, a piece of someone's hair or a picture of them, perhaps, and their name, but, some toenail or something, well, even if you don't, if you make a voodoo doll and you somehow associate it with them, that you can literally hurt them that way. It's a very ancient thing, and there's a reason that myth exists, quote unquote myth. Well, you did it. I mean, I would assume that was, if it was me, I would believe that the magic had something to do with it.
I did believe it for the longest time, but then I was like, it doesn't make sense. But I'll have another explanation. This is, again, very petty, but so my, a couple friends, whatever, they weren't going to go to the amusement park. I wasn't allowed to go for some reason. And it was like, I got pissed off. So on a paper, I wrote something. I forgot what it was. I think just the names. I lit it on fire. And I don't know why I did this. I was just really angry. I had like tears in my eyes or something, I think. I was just super fucking full of rage. And then they came back. And they were just explaining to me exactly how it was ruined completely. They couldn't do anything. They got fucked with by the authorities. Shit just got really bad for them. And essentially, it was a miserable night. So I don't know if that was magic or not, but that was really messed up. I couldn't believe it. Like when they were telling me this, I was actually feeling bad, but at the same time, I was like, it couldn't be me.
See, it sounds like you're a skilled black magician. You're good at cursing and hexing.
Weaver, did you have more to say, or are you done?
Actually, I have more to say, but I'm done. By all means, take the mic.
Thank you. So, I've had a couple of odd experiences with quote unquote magic. I think the first one where I actually irresistibly like channeled something was with this one time I went to my friend's house, just smoke weed and just chill with her, and she was with her boyfriend. It was like just good company and stuff, and she told me about her experiences. She had a bunch of like stuff she did all over the wall, a lot of like hexes and pentagrams. I found out that she was actually hexed by her ex-boyfriend, and she was like drawing this shit compulsively, like without any control. And it was a lot of like darkness in the room, like you could feel it like in some corners and stuff. And she told me a lot about her ex and then how he was like evading from the police, and there was a big investigation on him. The ex-boyfriend that she had did rape her and stuff like that. And I think he kind of, the way I thought of this is basically he possessed some kind of like incubus to basically to hex her, to basically elude her mind of these kind of vigorous like entities. And so I did the best I could to basically channel with it. I had this girlfriend I was talking to at the time. She was a psychic, and we had psychic sex together and stuff like that. And she told me some odd things, and we just talked a lot about esoteric things. And so she told me this one trick about touching palms, and so I went with my friend that day, and we tried. I decided like, okay, we're gonna touch palms and see what we can do. And I channeled this entity. I was feeling within her. We touched palms, and then I was chanting Sarum, and then I was doing like these things with my hands. It was like kind of ritualistic in a way, but it was like all subconscious. Like when I was doing it, it was really magical. It was just something like out of a movie, you know, when you just like possess something and you just kind of like you can control where it's coming from. And so I basically, what she told me that what just happened is she said I put a seal on it, and I'm not too sure like what that means in terms of like my spiritual sense of abilities, but I feel like it's quite a gift to have if you could put a seal over a hex, right? So I don't know. It's just one of those like weird situations that I've been in where I've like kind of like controlled something in the environment, and then later on, she did have a portal open in her room that was like that was part of the hex, I guess. And later on that day, like I text her, like, close the portal. You have the power as well in you because you've been dealing with this. It's up to you to basically live with this entity, or to basically abolish it. And I haven't really talked very much since then. I think she did close the portal in her room. She's moving houses now. But yeah, that was one story.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's interesting. I know what you mean about those instinctive magic moments like that. Someone else want to share something?
I've got something that I could share. I also would like whoever just spoke last. Is there any? Can I ask you a question? I don't know who it was, so I don't know who to address.
Satan, I think, right? Wasn't that Satan?
Yeah.
Well, that feels quite horrible. So Satan add a little bit of comedy to this, but yeah. So you know when you spoke about these things, if you feel like you maybe channeled this and took away and closed the hex, I don't know if you with the seals and stuff like that. Seals. I'm personally a Christian, right? Seals are very important within the book of the Bible in general. But yeah, seals are important, and when these energies work, if we're talking about demons, talking about angels, if we're talking about anything else outside of these realms, so you're talking about some sort of a hex being put over somebody, right? And usually with something like a hex, right, it's something that's sealed over the top of somebody. It's something that is cast onto them. And if you, so remember when like Shogun was talking about will, I was talking about will with like one of my personal experiences as well. So you actively, I'm just outlining this to just sort of explain, guys, how if we take his story on face value, he understood something was going on. He received information. He then, after receiving that information, used his will to say, I was going to intercede in order to change that situation. So thus taking on the energy of that, right, in some way. So did you, because I heard your story, but did you actively think something like that, right? Is that what you said?
About Will? I'm sorry, I'm not following properly.
About the the hex that was on the scroll. did you actively in your mind say, like, you know, think like, I'm going to try and help her? I want to help this person.
Yeah, I did. I did, and that's why I wanted to touch palms, and
Right. Okay.
it's what led me to I guess doing that.
Right. So that makes sense to me as well, because like I was saying about, you know, what we will to do, and someone had willed to do something to her, and then the energy of that will would place something over her, and then you had willed something in the energy somewhere else. I don't know what the release point for that was at any point, and I just want to be clear on this, guys. We've got to be careful when we're talking about these certain things, especially coming from the perspective that I'm coming from, is that when the energy that was willed towards you, it could have ended up negatively affecting you. Luckily, it seemed that you, for some reason, were in maybe a stronger mind state than what she was, because she had emotional and what I would call soul ties to her ex-partner. You didn't. So those soul ties, I believe, are sometimes maybe crucial and things like that. So maybe you willed it to that you would maybe take over and in helping, right? And yeah, I think that's just, I don't know, that story was really gelled with something that I sort of believe and understand. And you didn't have soul ties to that guy, so something maybe didn't get tied to you because it wouldn't have been a part of his original will. If you remember, that's why I'm talking so much over that word will. His original will and intent was to hex her and to affect her. So that didn't extend over to you in his incantation or in his process or his proceed. Did you know her ex-boyfriend?
I
That
didn't
was
know
my
him
question.
at all. I don't know if I
Okay.
saw him prior to like seeing her one of my first few times. But I just wanted to add something because like I didn't mention this. We did to basically we tried to kind of have an elusive attack towards her ex. Like we lit up incense and we channeled it, with our energy combined to basically just give him a lot of disorganized thought and just like a really bad headache and just like a lot of disturbing thoughts and images we would be projecting from our visions towards his mind state.
So that again, like I said, that backs up the theory that of my idea of like he didn't have a way of extending this to you. He didn't know who you were or anything like that, and maybe you relinquished some of his control, maybe by willing again that he would be a state of fog, in a state of less control over what he was trying to exert outwardly. And this is explained time and time again in Magick, spiritual warfare as well, when dealing with these types of situations. So, right, so I was going to give maybe just one or two of my own experiences. So, the sort of first experience that I would sort of talk about would be I just had to close the door because I didn't want someone hearing what I was saying. So my first experience was I was in an old town that is a renowned place for sort of what you would call like, you know, psychic phenomenon, ghosts, hauntings, all of these types of silly things, and not silly things, but these sort of words, right? And this place that I was essentially at, right? Someone else that I know had an experience there that I had been vaguely spoken about and heard at one time when I was younger. I didn't know exactly what they were speaking about, and I heard a very small part of what the information was, other than one part, which was a location. And these two experiences I'm about to speak about, I believe, were accidental, and I believe that I have accidentally been involved in certain things without even realizing it. And what I'm going to talk about is maybe a little bit of sex magic at this point. Like again, I said I'm a Christian. It's not something I believe in, but unfortunately, this is something that occurred with me. So I was with a girl in this place, this location, very rural area, actually very near the Battle of I think it's the Battle of 1066, right? which is a historical battle in England. If anyone can confirm that, I can't remember if 1066, if I'm wrong, in the area of a place called Devon, essentially, in England. And yeah, so this place has got a lot of stuff attached to it. So me and this girl, we essentially were, I would say that she was into the same sort of music as me. She was like gothic. I don't know what sort of things she was personally into. This is what's interesting about this, is that this has happened to me twice. So in the sense that I don't know exactly spiritually what that person was into, what they were involved in, but I knew what I was involved in at the time. And at the time, like I said, I was under attack, and I believe I was willing myself to overcome physical barriers and boundaries of my own brain. Also adding into that like physical training and conditioning of my bones as well as my muscles, so that when I did will my mind to use a higher percentile of my overall strength that my body would naturally scientifically would allow me to use for self-preservation, when I was doing these conditionings and willing myself to essentially use more, but by sort of continually telling myself that if I don't have this ability to do damage to my own body in actions, like physically outwardly, that someone could eventually kill me if I don't have these powers, almost these powers over my own brain, powers over my the amount of force that I could exert. So I know that I myself was involved in doing that at the time, in almost willing myself to be a more powerful human being on a physical level, based on my neurological chemicals that aid in that as well. So we ended up having sex in a park. I would say it was quite strange sex. I've only ever had sex like this one other time, where it was, it went on for a very long period of time, even though it was cold and it was outside, very much in the moment. We'd both taken, I believe, ecstasy or something of that kind. May have been 2CB, in fact. The night before, sorry, we had taken 2CB. Not that night, sorry. It was the night before we took 2CB. And we had spoken and stuff like this. And I feel like in our speaking, we'd spoken about...
What up, what up?
What up? But yeah, we'd spoken about this town, and obviously that it's only one town over and that we would visit it and stuff like this. And we'd spoken about, certain experiences of how that area is haunted in our family, and little things that we had heard, right? And yeah, we went there, and the night before, like I said, we chilled out, took some drugs. We went there, we ended up having a good time, we had a couple of drinks, and then yeah, it led to us ended up having sex underneath a tree. And then before I knew it, we were sort of like out of that sexual experience, which I believe was almost tantric in nature in some way, because the way our breathing was going was like very in synchronicity and stuff like this. And it was retrospectively looking back on it when I realized that the sex we had was a little bit different. And I believe we actually performed some sort of sex magic that I didn't really understand at the time that had happened. But what actually ended up happening next was extremely worrying. And then I remembered this story that I heard a small piece of information about, and then went back to confer with the person I heard the story from, which was actually my dad and my uncle. And so what ended up happening is I remembered this one location, and we tried to use our mobile phones to call a taxi to get back to where she lived, the town over, after we had sex and all this sort of stuff. Had a good time going to the different locations in this historical town, and our phones would not work, right? We had signal on our phones. We were like going up to higher hills, and then all of a sudden I see a red old English phone box. And now learning in the future that these are also associated with paranormal activity as well, which is quite strange. We go to this red English phone box, right? And we both go inside of it. Now we're starting to like feel cold and stuff, even though we didn't the whole night. And yeah, it was just very, very strange. What ended up happening this is the red phone box. That's one location that I remember hearing in this conversation when someone was talking about something that was a little bit, in the realm of paranormal when I was younger. And what happened next is that we're stood there and we start to see at knee level, like breath, like human or animal breath, like breathing out into the cold, like it was freezing. And then I started to hear like clicking sounds, like almost like muskets or some sort of rifles being loaded. And I started hearing muttering of like male voices. And I just remember like it happening 360 degrees, like there was a pack of hounds around us, like scratching at the doors. And at first I thought it was just in my own mind. And I looked at her and her face, and she had just gone white. She was silent and essentially just like gripping her chest. And I remember saying like, "What are you seeing? What are you experiencing? Are you okay?" And she was just like, "Who are these people? Who are these people?" And now it increased. There was scratching at the door all around us, like dogs scratching at this like red phone box, just going crazy, 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 crazy. And these men just talking and talking, and they were talking in like, it sounded like English accents, but it wasn't in English. It was like a different dialect of some kind. And to the point where it was just continuously encroaching towards us, right? And it got to a point, and I just remember back like when I was younger about like banishing like evil things. And I remember I just like I meant to sort of say like, be gone in Jesus' name, but I think I actually screamed out like, in the name of Yeshua, be gone. And like everything just equilibralized and stopped. Everything equilibralized and stopped, and all of this stuff stopped happening. And then the actual payphone, oh yeah, Shogun's back now. But yeah, so so what happened is it seemed like encroaching danger. It felt like all this pack of dogs were just getting closer and closer. It felt like the men were about to be there. So yeah, I just turned and I just screamed, in the name of Yeshua, be gone. In the name of Yeshua, be gone. And everything just stopped all of a sudden. It's like the temperature rose inside of there. The girl started feeling instantly better. And I was like, when I screamed, like, in the name of Yeshua, I take dominion over these dark forces at this time. I was like, I take dominion over them and I cast them out in the name of Yeshua. And it all stopped. And then the temperature just rose instantly, like, because we felt like we was in minus like 20 degrees. And then now we were warm again. And our phones, I remember this, which was weird, is like the payphone didn't work. Like, it's an old English phone, middle of nowhere, maintenance, whatever. But I just remember like our mobile phones instantly worked after this, and I feel like we either committed some form of sex magic or something like that, looking retrospectively like back at it. And then when I said I went to confer with someone else, right? I went and spoke to my dad, and my uncle was there at the same time. And this is the conversation where I'd heard before. The one location in this place was this red phone box. So I said, if you ever remember this red phone box thing, I heard you and my uncle talking about it, and like you guys was talking about this and what went on and all this sort of stuff. And there was just like, why? What happened? And I was just like, well, yeah, look, I was there, I was with someone, and like, I was like, what was your experience? And they literally word for word explained a very, very similar experience to like dogs scratching at this door, breath, like old English, like sort of speaking men, like loading guns, muskets, whatever it was. And then to top that off, I find out and say to my dad, like, what were you doing that night? And then my uncle goes, we were meeting girls. And I was like, oh. And then I was like, oh, you were meeting girls together? And they was like, yeah. And there was like, we had a foursome in the woods. And then we ended up at that phone box. And I was just like completely blown away by this, because I hadn't told them about what I had done because of like my age and stuff. But then I just sort of come out and said, I was like, well, I basically did the same thing. And that happened to me, and I just found that completely insane and crazy, and like it was just really strange. And then
That is
got a
indeed a
second-
crazy story.
yeah. I don't know if there's enough time for me to speak a little bit more, but it's up to you, Shogun. So I've got one other experience that.
I think that was quite a long story, but so I'm thinking maybe we should wrap up the podcast, unless it's relatively soon, unless anyone else wants to comment. But I think you'd probably pass the mic now.
I'd like to comment.
Go ahead.
So, I'm not sure if it's considered in the same vein as magic, or is it just clairvoyance or shamanism. I don't know if it runs in the family line, but both my dad and I have similar experiences of knowing which buildings not to go into and getting off vibes and seeing shit that may or may not exist. And I've given the story before. I've seen a cryptid with my old man, and yeah, sometimes hear shit that's not there. And when Grandma passed, he had conversations with her in his sleep. And when I was a young boy, apparently I talked to great granddad who had been dead 10 years before I was born. So, you know, I don't know if it runs in the family. It's not on my mom's side, or if that's considered magic, but I get creepy as shit vibes, and certain places I still go in there. I like the adrenaline rush, but it's like, you know, you feeling a presence or you're hearing shit or seeing things out of the corner of your eyes, and I don't know if I can chalk it up to paranoia or if it's something actually is going on, because more than half my buddies don't notice anything off at all.
Normal guy, what was the cryptid you saw? I have to.
Oh, my dad and I were outside the reservation, and it looked like a dog, almost larger than a dog, but it was standing on its hind legs, and it was walking around just plain as day, hind legs, dog, and it was holding its arms almost like a person. I mean, it had its arms out, like putting its paws on things to, you know, get its balance. Very large dog walking on its hind legs and using its arms for balance.
Wow.
Hey Shogun, quick question. Would you agree that magic and luck somewhat go hand in hand?
Yeah, I would. I mean,
or to add to that, maybe luck is caused sometimes by the inaction of someone doing magic.
Shogun, one question, brother. Truth for revolution here. Do you believe the Ouija board is some form of magic as well? And have you ever?
yeah, I think in a sense it would count as kind of magic in the sense that it could be seen as a divination, or it could be seen as, you know, necromancy. If you're speaking to the spirits of the dead, or whatever, demonology. And I have never played with one myself, nor would I. I personally, I've heard enough stories, etc. I don't haven't tried myself to
Yeah, guys. Well, I have a.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to invite it in. I'd rather. I'll go into a building that's kind of haunted for the adrenaline rush, but I really don't want to talk to it. I want to get my kicks and get out. I don't want nothing to keep in contact.
So, I actually tried using the Ouija board many times when I was young, and it never worked. It was fun. It was spooky, but nothing happened.
One time we were. Oh, go ahead. My bad.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I have tried to contact anything, and it was almost never successful. Like, intentionally, I was never able to contact anything, ever.
Correct. Yeah, I feel you, man. And it happened with me several times as well. It doesn't really work unless you really want it to work. You have to put your mind into it. Like, okay, I really want to speak to what I want to speak to. At the time, back in 8th grade, you know, I was wanting to sell my soul to the devil because I wanted money and I wanted fame. And big when I grew up, 3 months before my dad passed away, And you guys know my testimony story about Jesus Christ, and the next day my dad passing away. Just the day, just the day after, I had a sleep paralysis demon in front of me or whatever. Well, etc. etc. It happened 2 months after I played the Ouija board with my best friend Isaac, who's in the army right now. And I remember I was playing with him, and I like it wasn't working, dude. And shit stupid. And we made a pact. We said, look, we're not gonna move the little triangle board thing, you know. And if we do move it, we're dickheads. We were just very sold on it, man. We wanted to see if it was gonna work. So me and my boy Isaac, we went to my cousin's closet because nobody could see us, and we turned on a little lamplight back in there, and then we just started playing it. And I said, you know what, we need to do something. So we went on the internet and we started looking out how to contact spirits through it. And we started doing some chants. We turned some candles on, 3 candles to be exact, and we cut ourselves, like we cut our hands, like very little cut though, just so it can bleed enough, and we put it in the candle. So as we did that, we got it, and we put the 2 fingertips, the middle finger and the index finger, we put blood on them, and we put it on the little board thing. And we're like, dude, like we were just trying to see if it was gonna work. And let me tell you, it did, man. As soon as we did it, I asked, "Who's here?" And you can feel like a dark presence enter the closet, dude. And like it just felt so dim, like the light in there like went so dim, and the candles were like flowing like south, man. It was just weird. And I remember just saying it, and as I'm speaking right now, my 2 fingers, the index and the middle finger, are getting warm, right, real warm. But I remember doing it, and the name ZO came out. I don't like to say the full name, but ZO, you guys know what
or
yeah.
Zozo. Yeah.
Yeah, it was doing that back and forth, and we were like, whoa, 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 chill, like, who the fuck's doing this? And you could feel the force being put onto the board, the little border that it has.
Did you get it backwards?
Huh?
Did you get Zozo backwards as well?
Yes.
Oh man, that's bad.
Oh, very bad, dude. And like me and my friend Isaac were like, no, 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 like say goodbye, say goodbye, say goodbye. Like we were super scared. And my dad busted in, dude, and he was like, "What the fuck are y'all doing?" Like he was so mad, man. And like he's always been scared of that because my aunt Claudia, that's her name in English. He used to play with that dude, and that's my dad's sister, his real sister. And my tia, whatever, she used to play with that, and she told me that. When I was in the hospital a week later, when I found out my dad passed away, she was telling me like, if you like, don't ever think about going back to the Ouija board because I played it. I spoke to one of your mom's ex-boyfriends in high school, and he had shot himself. I found out from your mom, and he had said that he's trying to get in contact with Tony. He's trying to talk to Tony, and she was asking, why do you need to talk to Tony? Who was my dad? And the guy was saying he's gonna die soon. He needs to stop selling stuff, that he's invincible and nothing's gonna touch him. And I remember one day my dad was telling me, I had asked him a question. I was popping his toes and massaging his feet. He would make me do that. I remember asking him when I was like 9 years old, Dad, like, are you ever gonna die? Like I just asked a weird question like that. And he said, I'll never fucking die. I'm a gangster. He's like, I'm a gangster. I don't die. He's like, I'm gonna live forever. And he would just always tell me those things. And that guy said like he needs to stop saying that because he's gonna die very soon if he doesn't change his ways, his drinking ways, his smoking cigarette habits, and his eating. His eating was very bad, and he had blood pressure. So 2 months after I played the Ouija board, he passed away, and I saw a demon in my room the night before, and the demon was speaking in tongues. And if you've had sleep paralysis, you know who the old hag is. It's a lady in a dress, and she is absolutely horrendously ugly, and it looks demonic. And I just remember, her talking in tongues in front of my bed, and Lakers and Cleveland Cavaliers were playing, and I thought I was having a seizure. I thought I was dying, but it was sleep paralysis. And she was speaking in front of my bed, and she was like, speaking like blah, 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 like real weird. And then she finally said, "I'm coming for you tonight." She said that. I swear, I was crying, and the only thing that helped me was the name of Jesus. I for the first time, I just said, "Jesus, if you're real, God." I said, "God." I said, "God, if you're real." please, I don't want to die tonight. Please save me, Jesus Christ. I'm so sorry for everything I've done. Please, God. As soon as I said Jesus Christ, my hands started moving, sat up. You guys know the rest of the story. I've said it millions of times on podcasts. And if you haven't, you just have not been. Anyways, thank you.
I think after that encounter you had, you may have been in a possible succubation attack.
A succubation attack? What's that?
So you know what a succubus is?
No.
So a succubus is like an incubus, except it's like the opposite. It's like a female, that's trying to like, it's like look more into your soul and like suck, like I guess.
Like a Jezebel?
I don't know what that is.
Kind of. It's similar.
But she was an old lady, and she said, "I'm coming for you." And I've talked to a lot of people about this because it messed me up mentally as a kid and growing up. I didn't have a father, man, and my mom is kind of a drunk, and she didn't really pay attention. She had lost herself, man. So growing up, I was very confused. I had a learning disability already growing up, so it made it even harder for me. And I know my middle school.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you a couple more questions, if that's okay.
No, go, dude. Throw it at, dude.
What if she was like speaking in tongues, or when just before she said she was coming for you? Did she mention anything like I'm gonna take you to see this or that, like somewhere else? She's gonna take you to see somewhere else.
She made chills go up my body. As soon as she said, "I'm coming for you," that's when I closed my eyes and everything emptied out. Once I said, "God, please save me. I think I am dying and I do not want to die tonight. It's not my time. I am too young. Jesus Christ, please help me. I need you. I do not want to die yet, and I'm sorry for disrespecting my parents." That's basically what I said. I said I was sorry for disrespecting my parents because growing up, I was very bad towards my dad and my mom, and just constantly arguing. And I still would get my ass beat, but I didn't know how to control my mouth, dude. I had a very big blabbermouth towards my father, and it was always a competition between me and him. But deep down, we were best friends, man. So I don't know if you want to call it succubulation or whatever you wanted to say. There's a demon in my room, and I've had sleep paralysis many of times. Throughout my life, I would say actually eight times. And the very first one was that one, and it scarred me for life. And I do know how to fight off sleep paralysis now. It's just basically calling out in the name of Jesus, because every time I do that, it never fails. And I wake up, and things go great. It is what it is, man. I don't know what it is.
So so she, like, the first entity that you encountered, like when you had sleep paralysis, she didn't say anything about like, I'm gonna take you to see this place or anything like that, or she didn't say anything like that?
Okay, let me explain to you. So at first, it was like a troll. It didn't even look like a lady at first. At first, it was a troll, and I was like super scared as a kid all the time. This is 8th grade, by the way, so I was 14. January 15th, because my dad died the next day, January 16th. So I just remember laying in bed, waiting for my parents to come back from a barbecue because I was very hungry after basketball practice. I was watching TV, I was watching the Lakers game, Cavaliers, and then I see in front of my bed. Well, I was trying to keep myself awake, but I kept falling back to sleep, and I finally just ended up falling asleep, and then I woke up and I said, "Oh shit, like, wake up, like, your parents are on their way." I said that in my head when I was asleep. I woke up, blah, blah, blah. I saw a little man or a woman, I don't even know what it was, walking up and down like it was walking stairs. And it was like right in front of my bed, in front of my door, next to my TV. And I just remember like shaking, and I was like calling out for my dad, but I couldn't scream my dad's name. And everything just sank. It was just weird. So after it was doing that up and down the stairs, it stood up, and it was a woman dressed differently, because at first I couldn't really see what it was. My eyes were my vision was blurred out, but I was seeing like a little troll man. Like, it was weird. Like, he had he had a hat, like a tall hat, but he was walking up and down, like he was like laughing at me, and then it stood up, and it was an old lady. So it like transformed. It was just weird, man. I don't know. She wasn't asking me anything about, "Oh, I want to show you this place." No, it was pure, like in a very grunting voice, and I could just hear her. I couldn't even hear LeBron on the TV during his interview. I could hear her, and I was looking all around the room thinking, am I dying? Am I in hell? or is this a dream? It wasn't a dream. The TV was on clearly. The lady was in front of my bed, and I could still see the door behind her, like through her body. So it was like a ghost, maybe. I was it's just the first time I've ever seen that, dude. Maybe my third eye was open. I started getting very spiritual back in 2016, and I was thinking, like, I was learning about the pineal gland and stuff. Maybe my third eye was open, and then like I caught upon Jesus, and he just said, like, I don't know what it was, man, but it was very demonic, dude. And it's still with me to this day, and I'll take that to my grave, man.
These are amazing stories that you guys have, and I appreciate you all sharing them. Fascinating stuff. I think we will have to wrap the episode up soon, but is there anyone who hasn't had a turn yet who wants to speak about magic or anything supernatural, I guess? Okay. Well, if not, I want to thank you guys all very much for sharing your experiences and your knowledge about magic. And again, this is going to be the first of a series where we'll talk about subjects like this every couple weeks or whatever, a few days. So thanks a lot, guys. Again, we're the Roundtable Discord server. You can find us on the roundtablediscord.com on all different social media, politics, and conspiracy on Discord. So please jump back to a regular Roundtable room, and we'll do another event tomorrow and the next day at 8 Central. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Weaver, for recording and uploading.